Hey, what's up everyone, and welcome to the School of Personal Finance. So this week we're going to get back to doing a case study using Right Capital financial planning software. And just to throw a reminder out there, if you would like me to do a case study based on your general information, shoot me an email, rich@schoolofpersonalfinance.com, and I will eventually get to creating a case study based on your info. Last time I threw this out there, I did get a bunch of requests, so I'm going to continue to work through those, but I would like to start doing these more often. So send it over to me and I promise eventually I will get to it. A few other reminders is my education center. I do have a soft opening available now on the website, so you can go ahead and sign up. And I do have a few courses in there. I have a few case studies that are in there, ones that I've previously done before, but the plan is I'm going to be adding so much content into there and creating an entire library on personal finance topics. So things to help you become great with money. So like the first course in there is Master Your Family's Finances in 30 Days, where I walk through 10 steps to get a hold of your finances and master everything so that you get on solid financial footing. I have a credit card masterclass in there as well. I have a class on all different types of retirement accounts and investment accounts and how to choose the right one for you. So head over there, check it out. I'm going to be adding webinars. I'm going to be doing member spotlight meetings where members of the community, I'm going to come on and ask them a bunch of questions. I always think that it's great to learn from other people and what they've done in their lives. So make sure to check all that stuff out. All right, let's get to it. All right, so just my quick disclaimer before I share my screen with you. None of this is personal financial advice, right? Even though I'm using somebody's general information, I'm not giving them personal advice. I'm not giving you personal advice. All of this is really just for educational purposes only. All right, I'm going to share my screen. Let's get into it. All right, so we have Mike and Lori Young, and now they are both 26 years old, recently married, newlyweds, and looking to get their financial plan together. So we're going to start over at their net worth statement. So as we can see here, they have a net worth of $16,000. They have $55,000 in the bank. So $5,000 checking, $50,000 in joint savings. And I believe most of this money came from their recent wedding where they received a lot of money in wedding gifts. And then they have no credit card debt, which is nice. For investments, Mike has a 401k, current balance $32,000 in there. As far as loans go, they have two pretty big student loans. So Mike $53,000, Lori $18,000. So a total of $71,000 of student loan debt. And as far as property, so they live in New York. Their monthly rent is $2,000 a month. So they don't own a home right now, but that is one of the goals that they have, which we will get to shortly. All right, let's jump over to income. So Mike's salary, $70,000. Lori's salary is $75,000. Now you can see I broke up Lori's salary into a couple different stages of life. And the big reason for that is because they plan to start a family and have kids, and Lori wants to be able to stay home from work for 10 years. So I broke down her income based on those time frames. So from now through 2025, her salary is $75,000, and we're going to inflate that by 3% for inflation every year. Then she wants to stay home. So from 2026 all the way through 2034, she's going to have zero income. And then after that, she plans on going back to work. I put in $100,000 starting amount in 2035 and then up until her retirement age. So that's how we broke down Lori's income through this. And this is going to play a big role in coming up with a financial plan and making sure that these numbers work. For Mike, so we also inflate his income by 3% per year. He's currently making $70,000 right now. All right, so that is their income. So now why don't we go over, we'll go to savings first. So for savings, Mike is contributing 10% into his 401k. Lori's not currently contributing. So for Mike's 401k, he also gets a match up to 4%. So they do 100% up to 4% of his salary as an employer match. So that's a nice match. So now Lori, she's not contributing at all. And I do believe that she does have a match that she is leaving on the table that she is not taking advantage of. So, without even going any further, knowing anything else about them, I would recommend that she at least contributes that 3% in order to get the match on there, if this is the correct information in here. But you always want to take advantage of the match. That's just free money. Don't leave it on the table. So that is the current savings that they're doing. So now let's circle over to goals. So for goals, Mike wants to retire at age 67. And now Lori, she has age 60 in here. And now that is also with taking that 10-year period off, while she's raising the family. For monthly expenses in retirement, they want to be able to spend $5,000 a month in retirement. And now that would be in addition to any mortgage that we will have accounted for. So this would be above and beyond that. And then we have, healthcare costs. This is just the national average. So now a goal is to buy a home. So we have $120,000 target amount for a down payment in here, and they want to be able to do this in the year 2025. So 3 years from now, they want to be able to save up 120 grand in order to buy a home. So now here we show for the purchase of a home, their goal is to be able to buy a house in the $500,000 range, be able to put 20% down. This stuff I just entered in, 30-year mortgage, 4%, who knows what interest rates will be at that time, and then property taxes and insurance, just guesstimating based on the price of the home and what taxes are, in New York. And then the cash reserve goal of having $20,000 in an emergency fund, and we're going to inflate that every year, for inflation. So for this 120 grand, that includes the $20,000 in an emergency fund. So 100,000 is what they're looking to put down on the new home. All right, and then for their current expenses, so it costs them $3,000 a month to live right now. So now that is on top of their current rent, which is $2,000 a month, and those student loan payments, which we've already accounted for as well. All right, so let's go back over to their net worth statement, and I'll give my initial thoughts on everything here. So it's nice that they have 55 grand in the bank right now. That's a good start to being able to put money down on a home. For the $32,000 in Mike's 401k, that's also a good start. I mean, they're really just out of college a few years. So the fact that he has $32,000 in there right off the bat is pretty good. I mean, I would love to see them saving more for retirement. And as you see here, their only investment account is that 401k. So they're not investing in things like Roth IRAs or traditional IRAs. And like we mentioned before, Lori does not contribute to her 401k. So that's not a red flag, but it is something that I would definitely like to see them investing more in. I mean, these student loans, they suck, to be honest with you, right? So 5.99%, a monthly payment of $430 a month, $53,000 balance. So this must be a 20-year term on here. Now, would it be nice if they could pay that off sooner? Yes, and we'll take a look and see if that is a possibility. But the fact that that Lori wants to take 10 years off from her job and that Mike's current income is $70,000 and they want to buy a house, seems like it's going to be hard to throw additional money at that student loan. And then we have Lori's student loan, $18,000 balance, so $254 a month. So this one here is a 10-year loan, and it looks like she's already a few years into it. But yeah, it would be nice if they could get rid of both of these before Lori takes off from work and they buy a home. I just don't know if it's going to be a possibility. But my first thoughts are that they're doing good financially. It's nice they don't have any credit card debt. They have a nice chunk of money in the bank. Looks like they both have nice, steady, stable jobs, which is good. But if they want to be able to afford a $500,000 house in the next few years, and Lori wants to take off, for 10 years to take care of the family, and they're going to start having kids, which are going to add expenses in, and we'll add that into the plan as well. So definitely some things to be concerned about and things that we have to kind of play out. And hopefully they have some flexibility with all this stuff. But overall, my initial instinct is that they're doing pretty well financially. All right, so let's start playing with some numbers and seeing how it all looks. So now this Monte Carlo simulation, if you haven't heard me say it before, what they do is they take all the information that we just input into the system, they run it out over 1,000 times, looking at every different type of scenario, and they come up with a probability of success. So what that means is that by the end of their plan, they will not run out of money. So they have a very high probability of success here, and this $7.6 million, that is the median amount that they would end their plan with at age 90. So from that, it looks very rosy. But there are definitely things in here that we are not taking into consideration that we're going to have to play around with. Like one of them being, we don't know how many kids they're going to have or how much it's going to cost to have kids. We don't have college savings as a goal in any of this. So we're not planning for kids at all in here. So one thing that I would do right off the bat is I would add an expense item into here. Let's say, $1,500 a month for kids. And I already set this up in here that it will start in the year 2025 and it will last for 25 years. So if they have a bunch of different kids, over a 25-year time span, that's a pretty good guesstimate of how long they'll be paying for their children. I mean, who knows? It could end up being a lot longer than that, hopefully not. So I click refresh right here. How does that impact the plan? So you can see that dramatically reduces everything, right? The probability of success drops significantly. The median number is under $1 million. So that makes a big difference if we add in $1,500 a month cost to having children. All right, so there are other things that we could play around with, but first I just want to go to cash flows and see what it looks like year after year as far as their cash flow goes. So now this is still under the current plan. So this is not accounting for that $1,500 a month with the kids. All right, so as we can see, we have these next 4 years where Lori is also going to be working, where they have this higher income, and their expenses, are under control. They're really not high. So as we can see, we have years here of them being able to save a good amount of money. They're very cash flow positive. All right. And now 2025, that's when we have this big goal of putting down $100,000 on the house. Now this goes up for inflation a little bit. That's why it's a higher number right here, but they would be able to do it. If we look at accounts and the ending balance by account, we could see that they get that $120,000 cash reserve goal in 2024, right? And then in 2025, that's when they use that money to put as a down payment on the house, and they still have $98,000 left over. So it is possible for them to buy a house in the next 5 years and to have that down payment ready for them. But what we could see here is when Lori starts to take off from work, right? Let's go back and we will look at the summary again real quick. So now that she's not working and their expenses have gone up because now they have their mortgage payment, the taxes and insurance, it's more than their current rent. So their cost of living has gone up. Lori's not working, so their tax payment has gone down. Mike is still contributing to his 401k, but they are cash flow negative now, right? So they have this period of time from 2026 all the way through till 2035, the whole time that Lori is taking off work to be with the kids, where they are in a pretty big deficit, right? That's a little bit over $2,000 a month of deficit right there. So if we go back to accounts and we look at the ending balance by account, we could see that during that period of time, they're going to drain their taxable account, which is their savings account or their emergency fund. And then it looks like they're going to have to start taking withdrawals from Mike's 401k, which they don't want to do. So you could see these years here, they're taking withdrawals from the 401k until Lori goes back to work, and then they could start replenishing that savings account. So if we look at ending balance from account, this account, even though Mike is still contributing to it and it's growing, it's going down because they're taking distributions from it. And obviously it's a terrible idea to take distributions from a 401k, when you're in your mid-30s, because then not only do you owe taxes on the distributions, but you're also going to owe the IRS a 10% penalty. So that is not an ideal way to go about doing it. But then the reason why they still have a very high probability of success and everything turns out okay is because once Lori goes back to work, then all of a sudden they have this excess cash flow that they're going to be able to start saving money at a good clip again. But the thing that we're not accounting for is now that they have kids and they have to start saving for college and they have just the expenses of having children. So we can't go by these numbers. So that very high probability of success, it doesn't make me feel good at all, just because we're not accounting for them having kids at all. So now if this is really what they want to do, I mentioned earlier that I would love to see them being able to save more for retirement, but the truth is they're just not going to have the cash flow to be able to do that. So even Mike putting in 10% into his 401k, as you can see, if we stick to this plan, they're going to need to withdraw it in their 30s. So I don't even know if I would be doing that, because it doesn't make sense to put the money in there and then have to pay the taxes and the penalty to get out. So a lot of things that I really don't like here. And, what could you do? It's like she wants to be able to stay home and raise the kids. It's not an easy situation. So a couple of thoughts, number one is, should you put off buying a home, right? Maybe you just wait a little bit longer, you continue to save money, and you make it a priority of Lori being able to stay home with the kids. You might have to rent a bigger place at that point, which is not ideal also. But for her income to totally disappear, and then you take on this bigger expense of buying a home and you use up all the cash that you saved on the down payment, it's going to leave you very strapped, and it's not really a great way to go. So an ideal situation, which I'm sure that you are all thinking the same thing as me, would be if Lori did not completely give up her income for 10 years. So let's say that she's able to even do part-time work, or maybe Mike, even though we'll throw it under Lori's right here, let's say that Mike takes on the second job and is able to get a little bit more income. Let's just say that it's $30,000 a year. So during that 10-year period where Lori wants to take a leave from working, instead she works part-time and makes 30 grand, or we make the assumption that Mike is going to get a second job or do something and make an additional 30 grand. But between the two of them, they have 30 grand a year coming in, an additional 30 grand a year coming in during that 10-year period. So what difference does that make? And that gets us back in there. So all of a sudden we're at an 86% probability of success. Another thing that we could look at real quick is, what if Lori starts contributing to her 401k and she does in fact get that match? So let's say that Lori is going to do 10% into her 401k. We click that refresh button, and yeah, so that brings it up to 92%. So now we're in business here, right? So now all of a sudden, right, we have Lori making $30,000 a year during that 10-year period. Then she goes back to work. She starts at $100,000, and then we'll make that into retirement, and we have her retiring at age 60. So for this, obviously, I feel much more comfortable, right? Let's say that we change this to $15,000 and we call it very part-time. We're still in business there, right? 84% with 4.5 million median amount. I feel pretty comfortable with that, right? That's not too bad. So then what I would recommend beyond that is, instead of retiring at age 60, you know what, tough it out. Let's go for another 2 years right here in order to make this work. And if you're willing to go to age 62, now all of a sudden we're back up over 90% on there. So as you could see, we could make this work on here. We just got to play around with some stuff. And obviously there's so many things that could come into play where you just don't know where life is going to take you. So an even better thing would be is if Mike was able to increase his income. So let's say instead of $70,000 a year, let's say he gets a nice raise, he changes jobs, he's able to start at $80,000 and then go from there for the rest of his career. Then we're at 99% and we're really moving. And one thing that they asked me about when they sent me the email were my thoughts on, paying down the student loan faster versus investing that money, like stopping the 401k contributions and just focusing on paying down the student loan. But they still want to buy a house in the next few years. So for me, that's just a tough question to answer. I would not pay down the student loans any faster in this situation, just because you're going to be in a liquidity crunch, especially if Lori's going to stop working. You need to have all the savings you could possibly have just to get through that time in your life. I mean, it would be nice to not have those monthly payments, but if you're going to focus on paying down the student loans, then I think you really have to put off buying a house for a few years. You would have to wait until you're done with those student loans, till you have enough saved up, 20% down, to be able to buy that house. And if you're willing to do that, then I might be okay with it. But even in that instance, instead of paying down the student loans, I might rather see you both take advantage of the matches in your 401ks and contribute to Roth IRAs, so you really start building out that retirement income. But if we look at your cash flows later on in life, you really are in a good situation because you do have excess cash flows coming in. So once Lori goes back to work, right, you have these excess amounts, so you're able to save every year, right? So now we have Mike, we juiced it up to $80,000 a year salary, so you need to go, get a raise or get a second job or something. Then we have Lori, $75K through the next few years, and then we have her doing the $15,000. So that's where we're getting these numbers from. And then she goes back to work, 2035 full time, where we have that $100,000. So with those income inflows, right, looking at the cash flows from that, we still have this negative period of time when Lori's only making $15,000 a year. But then once you get through that and she goes back to work full time, now all of a sudden you have nice excess cash flow every year to save for retirement, to save for the kids, and this is including that $1,500 additional expense for the children, right? Yeah, so we could see we did from 2025, and we're inflating it also all the way, up through 2049. So we did 25 years of having that additional expense. So at least we're accounting for it in here. And, even with that expense, we have nice positive cash flow through all those years. So really the biggest hurdle in my mind is, how do we get through that 10-year period of staying home with the kids? And it's either through Mike busting his hump, getting another job, increasing his income, or it's Lori getting a part-time job where even if she could just make, basically $1,200 a month extra to help them out, then it will it will make all the numbers work, and I'll feel a lot better, doing that. The last thing I would want to see is them having no money in the bank, no emergency fund, and they're relying on taking distributions from a 401k and paying the penalty in order to make all the numbers work. That is not a good situation. So yes, I do think you could buy a house a few years from now if you really want to do that, but there are going to be some sacrifices, and you have to play it by ear and see where things go. And obviously all this is going to depend on, how many kids you have, how quickly you have them. If you only end up having 2 children and you bang them out one after the other, then you might be able to go back to work before 10 years. Maybe you only take 6 years off. So a lot of variables, a lot of things depend on all of this, but you have a lot going in your favor. I mean, another big variable with all this is inflation and what the cost of living is going to look like. Like, we're looking out, 40 years into the future. So we just have no idea what it's going to look like. Like, we have a big jump in expenses here, and this is when Mike retires. So at that point, that's when, he won't have group benefits anymore, and he's going on whatever healthcare system we have at the time. So if we look at 2063, healthcare, $84,000 a year for the 2 of them. I mean, hopefully that is not the case. But the system, it is inflating healthcare, I think, at like 5% a year, because that's what it's been for the last decade or so. So hopefully it doesn't continue on that path. But just another point to make that, to plan for 40 years out, it's basically impossible, right? It's like we do the best that we can to, guide us over the next decade or so, but there's just so many variables that come into play in here. So a couple other thoughts, like life insurance. They didn't mention anything about life insurance, but they both need to make sure they get, I would get 30-year policies at this point, especially if you're planning on buying a house and starting a family. Get that insurance in place when you're young and healthy, a nice term policy for 30 years. I have a video on how to calculate how much term life insurance you need, so that would be a good place to start. And you could stagger the insurance, like you could do, a 20-year term, and then once you start having kids and buying the house, you get another 20-year term. So nothing wrong with doing that. You don't have to do it all in one shot right at the beginning, but you want to make sure that you're protecting your loved ones in case something happens to you. Investment portfolios, we really did not talk about. For the 401k, I just put in that they have an aggressive allocation, which they should at this point because they have such a long period to go before they're going to be using that money. So even have it 100% in stocks at age 26, I am on board with that. And then you get a little bit more conservative as you start to age and get closer to retirement. But overall, I think what they're looking to do is possible, but at the same point, it's not going to be easy. So there are going to be sacrifices along the way. I mean, if Lori continues to work while having kids, or if she just takes a few years off, it makes all these numbers a hell of a lot better. But this is what young people are faced with these days. It's like you get married, you want to start a family, you want to buy a house, you want to pay off your student loans. There's a lot of demands for your income, a lot of ways that you want to be able to spend that money and invest for your future, but there's only so many ways that you can slice and dice it. So it's a tough situation, but I would rather take advantage of compounding, invest early, take advantage of those 401k matches, make sure that you're building that snowball, that could just build and build and build as you get older, and let compounding, take effect. You want to build those retirement accounts right out of the gate. But obviously, you want to start a family, you want to build a house, that's going to mean that you're going to have to make some sacrifices, and that most of your cash flow is going to go towards those things. So there's no easy solution, but those are my thoughts on this one. Hopefully everybody found that helpful. Let me know in the comments below what questions you have. I know I didn't cover everything in this. I wanted to keep it, under 30 minutes, and I did jump around a little bit in here. But overall, I think that they could make this work. It's just a matter of it all playing out and seeing how it goes. And this is another reason why it's so important to have a financial plan that you're looking at each and every year and updating it, because things are going to change so dramatically for them over the next 10 years that they have to be looking at this stuff all the time and updating their plan and staying on top of everything. But for now, I would just keep on plowing money into that savings account, save for that down payment, try to take advantage of those 401k matches as well, and let's see where the chips fall. But I hope everybody found this one helpful, and I'll see you in the next one.